Hi there. My name is Pat Fader. I teach our Capstone Project class at MATC, and what I wanted to do right now is run through kind of what I do in my face-to-face class, and that is basically give students enough information so that they can set up their two servers and client, basically section 6 of your Capstone Project, questions 1, 2, 3, and I'll jump down to question 20 as well. So the idea of this is at the end you'll have two domain controllers and a Windows 10 client all configured, and at that point you can kind of just pick away at the rest of the Capstone Project. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to do a fresh install of Windows 10, and also I'm partway through doing a fresh install of Server 2016 right now. So let's do the 10 box immediately. New virtual machine, and I'll skip over a lot of the steps here. Typical. And I am using an ISO, and I better go pick the right one. So let me go to my ITnet 110 folder and grab the Windows 10 ISO. Next, version. It's Windows 10. It's a 64-bit. There we go. That's correct. Next. As far as let's see here, ITnet. Let's Win 10 demo. All right. Disk size is 60 gigabytes. That's fine. As far as I'll customize the hardware a little bit. I'm just going to set our network adapter up to be host only for now. So I will have a Windows 10 machine when I'm done that is on a private network. Incidentally, you don't want to use our virtual machines from ITnet 112 for your Capstone project, and that is because we've disabled the update service, and you will need the update service to do one of the activities in your Capstone project. So while that's installing, let's just kind of wind back a little bit, look at the Capstone project. So what I want to do essentially is two servers and a client. I want to configure the IP addresses. You'll notice that the DNS address on my client points to or has the address of our domain controller. That's because during the when I make this server a domain controller, it will automatically install the DNS service. So this machine here will be a domain controller and a DNS server for the two other computers here that you see in our network diagram. Also, what I'd like to do is once I get them set up, I want to jump down to question 20 and install the remote server administration tools. And you'll notice on the Windows 10 client, if I do it correctly, when that's done, we'll go under administrative tools and we'll have the ability to administer Active Directory from our Windows 10 client. There's other ways of doing it, I know, but that's just the way I'm having you. There's other tools you can use to remotely manage your environments, but we're just going to use these the remote server administration tools for this Capstone project. So we're looking at doing questions 1, 2, 3, and 20 today. Let's take a look at where we are in the install, and then I can just pause it. Oh, this will happen. This kind of confuses students. I need to restart my machine. And let's see here. We hit reset. I think I hear my son coming in the door. And I hit my mouse to get my cursor in the virtual machine. And I'm waiting for this to say basically press the key to boot off your CD, and I'll start hitting the any key. All right. Any key, not the any key, but any key. Getting there. There we go. I don't know if you saw that on the screen, but it said press the key to boot off the DVD. I'm doing that now. We're booting off our ISO. And at this point, I will hit pause, and we'll come back. All right, I'll just comment on a few of the screens here. So next. And you should know this actually from your previous classes, but I'm not going to repair the installation. I only have a new install here. Trying to think what else there is. As far as a product key, I don't have one, but we can install without. That's a good thing. I don't have a product key. I had to pick my edition. This is worth talking about. You don't want home. We can go with like Windows Pro would be great. 64-bit. I could go with education too. That's basically education's kind of is very similar, equivalent to I don't even see our enterprise here. Basically, Windows 10 makes an enterprise product, and they have a education version which is cheaper for schools. So we'll go with Pro for our Capstone project. We'll accept the terms, and there might be one more screenshot, and that's about it for the install. We're not upgrading, we're doing a fresh install, so we're going to pick the second one here, the bottom one. This gives us here the screen. We have the opportunity to partition our hard drive. I'm okay having a single partition, so that's fine. Next. And now I can pause it, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. Alright, so my install is almost done. Probably the one thing you'll want to do after you do an install is make sure that you install VMware tools. Our pre-configured ones are always, at MATC always have the tools installed, but that's something you'll want to do when you make your own VMs. Let's see here. So the VMware tool, selecting that caused this to show up. It essentially mounted an ISO into our DVD-ROM drive, so I'm just going to run setup on that. And again, this was all kicked off by me just selecting VM install. Well, it said before install VMware tools. So we'll pick that. Yes. This adds a better video driver. It allows you to copy and paste from your host machine to your virtual machine. There's a number of benefits, so you always want to just go with the VMware tools. Okay. You can kind of tell when they're installed because, well, they're not installed yet. I'll pause this. Alright, so my machine rebooted after the tools were installed. My user account that I set up is just admin with a not so creative password of password01. And one of the advantages with VMware tools that I've mentioned in other screencasts is like when your workstation window is larger than your desktop, or all the way around, if your VM's desktop is larger than the actual window, you just select View, Fit, Guess Now, and it rescales everything. View, Fit, Guess Now. We'll give it a second. I think Windows 10. Yep, there we go. Still coming up. So at this point, I can quickly set my IP addresses. If I need to make you watch it, I guess you can skip over this. Let's see here. Properties. And we're going to go with static IP addresses, 192.168, and I actually forgot what the Capstone project is. It looks like 20.103, okay? 20.103. Default gateway doesn't matter, we don't need one because this machine is just on a local only network. And then our DNS server is 192.168.20.101. And so all we need on this, I guess I should also change the machine name. And there's multiple ways to get in there, getting to this. If I just right click this PC and go properties, and I can turn on, get some odd machine name. I will call my computer client 1. I'll come back to the screen when I want to join my domain. Alright. So IP addresses are set on this machine. Machine name is set. Oh, you know what? I'll do one other thing before I reboot it. And let me just turn the firewall off now, because I'm gonna use ping to ping this machine just to make sure I have connectivity once my server's up and running. So let's see here. Turn Windows Firewall on or off. You can tell they're on right now. So now, when I join the domain, I'll get one more network profile. It'll be our domain network profile. So I want to come back and double check my network settings again to see if the firewall gets turned back on once my client joins our domain. So good. Lots of red. That's what we want. So at this point, I'm just going to. Actually, I can go. I could just let's see what else. I'll show you one more thing. We need to know this in a second. So this computer is Windows 10. We knew that. And what I want to see is more information here. What's going on? There we go. So 64-bit operating system. I'm looking for my client version, which I don't. If it's here, I don't see it. So let me just try something else. WinVer. Windows 10 Pro operating system, version 1803. All right. So I'll kind of revisit this, but when we look at our server. But basically, what this tells me is we know that every 6 months, Windows updates their client operating systems. They also update their server operating systems. The version number reflects when it was released, so 2018, third month. We'll need to look at the same information on our server when we determine which RSAT to download onto this machine. I'll pause it for now until our server's up and running. So my server install is almost done. Kind of like Windows, I'm going to have to start inputting some passwords. So my username is going to be administrator. My password will be password01. All right. And then I'll just, let's see here, we'll log in. So right now we're logging in locally. This server is it's a member of a work group. Can't log on to a domain yet, and when we do make this a domain controller, you will only be able to log on to a domain. There won't be a local logon option. There will be on our client. All right, so we're on my server, and let's see. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I'll just verify my virtual machine's network settings, and that's set to host only, 4 gigabytes of RAM, so I think everything's fine. I probably should have made it more, but that's good enough for now. Local server. I want to change the machine name. I want to change the IP address, reboot it, and make it a domain controller. So computer name. DC1. I won't reboot yet. I'll also, I'll set the IP address, and we'll verify that we can ping, and then we'll go from there. So let's see here. I don't have to turn the firewall off on this machine. I just have it off on my client because I'm pinging my client. So let's see. All right, one more static IP address. 192.168.20.101. This machine will become a DNS server as well. So as far as DNS goes, we'll use a loopback address. It'll point back to itself. we don't have to worry about a default gateway, and we are good. Okay, so if I did it right, should be able to just go to the command prompt or PowerShell or something, just do a ping. Ping 192.168.20.103, I think that's what I have. Okay. So we'll restart this machine and then we'll make it a domain controller. I probably actually, I'm just curious, we'll take a look here real quick. This needs VMware tools, so I'm going to install that and then I'll reboot it, but I'll pause the screencast for now. Alright, so the server rebooted, and now we will make it a domain controller. Let's fit the guest now. We'll just wait for Server Manager to boot up or load up. Alright, so we will go to Add Roles and Features. And we're going to add a role onto the local server. And we are going to add Active Directory Domain Services. And that's it. I mean, later in the project, you guys will add DHCP and potentially other services, but for now, we're just going to make this a domain controller. I was hoping to, I kind of messed up a little bit. I'm going to generate an error real quick. I'll pause it and I'll show you later. Alright, so it will install. Alright, so the first part of the process is finished. I see a notification up here. Post deployment, promote this server to a domain controller. Alright, so this is some of the things that we just talked about in my class. Since this is the first domain in a brand new forest, we would have to pick add a new forest. You know, if I was adding a second domain controller, I would pick a top option, add a domain controller to an existing domain, but we don't have that yet. Specify the domain name. So in the Capstone project, I think I said to use ad.4drubric, your initials.com. So the logic here is, you know, a company like, you know, or a school like matc.edu, they own the domain. So in our case, we'll assume that I own the 4drubric, pef.com. So that domain name, the company use that domain name for various, you know, for web pages, websites, or whatever. We're going to use a part of that for Active Directory. I could get rid of this AD part, the part that we're going to use for Active Directory, and just call our domain name 4drubric.com, but pef.com. But basically, kind of what you want to do is you want to take the Active Directory piece and store that in just a part of your domain. So that way we can have dedicated DNS servers just to support the Active Directory piece. Why? Well, in a nutshell, DNS is going to be used like essentially like a database that will have a lot of extremely important information for Active Directory to operate. You know, to start off with, it'll have the names and IP addresses of all of our servers. It'll have the names of servers where we can authenticate to. It'll contain information like the names of authentication servers that are in our same site, so to allow authentication traffic just to stay local versus, like, you know, traveling around the globe if we have multiple sites. So anyways, that information is something typically you wouldn't want to put on the same DNS server that's facing the outside world. So what we would typically do is have an internal DNS server handle Active Directory, ad.40rubricpef.com, and then our external DNS server could handle the rest of that zone. So with that said, it's a long discussion just to say add a new forest. And our domain name is ad.40rubricpef.com. The defaults here are fine. This is interesting. This password here is not like an authentication password. With this, you would use directory services restore mode if you ever made a mistake and let's say accidentally deleted a bunch of users or did something in Active Directory and you wanted to restore Active Directory back to the way it was, you would need this password. The idea here is, and it's hard to describe without having a whiteboard, and I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this, you can research this on your own. But think of it this way, if we have two domain controllers, if you accidentally delete one user, that deleted user entry gets replicated to your other domain controller. And if you realize that was a mistake, and your thought is, well, I'll just restore my domain controller from a backup. That's fine. You restore your domain controller from a backup. That backup shows that your user has not been deleted. The only problem is when that domain controller begins to replicate with the other domain controller in your environment, the other domain controller is going to say, wait a second, this user is deleted. I'm sure I'm right because my timestamp is much newer than your timestamp is. So there's really no way to restore a user from a backup unless you use this directory services restore mode, and that's where this password is used. Done. Specify DNS. I think we can just hit next here. And now the domain name, the NetBIOS name, basically, so our domain is ad.40rubricpef.com. Our NetBIOS name was just the first part of our domain name, so AD. And you'll see that when a user logs in now, they'll kind of essentially, it'll say you're logging into AD, Active Directory. So we're just following some best practices. If you research it online, this is what is typically recommended. We're going to keep our database files and everything else local. I mean, at the defaults. Now we should see something here. Hopefully going to generate an error, and I can talk about that. Some of the errors are the things I'm talking about. Let's see here. Top one. Domain controllers have a default security settings, so that's fine. Delegation can be created because of parent. So basically, they couldn't find a parent DNS server, so we're just going to it's going to create a DNS server and a zone on our DNS server to support our Active Directory environment. Fine. I must have messed it up a little bit. I was trying to generate another error that said during the promotion process that it wouldn't allow things to happen because the password of our administrator account does not meet password complexity requirements. If you get something like that, you need to go to computer management and just change your administrator's password. Go under users. Right now he's a local user, but once this becomes a domain controller, it'll be a domain admin. So essentially you would just want to change this password to something like password 01 or a complete if you're getting some kind of error. Typically students get the error if they allow VMware Workstation to install server for them, and then the Workstation product actually just sometimes uses a blank password or something not very secure. My machine is rebooting. That's what that's all about. So we have anything else going on here? Looks like we're all done. So when we log in next, we will have a domain controller. Well, all right, so now our domain controller is rebooted, and when we log in, obviously this is Control-Delete. You can see there's our NetBIOS name that we chose during the creation of our domain. Our password is password01. So just remember, if you ever want to, if you're on a client, you want to force logging into your domain, you would just put your domain, your NetBIOS domain name / then your username, administrator in this case. There it goes. Now, at this point we have a domain. Now it's time to take our client and join the domain. We can do that. I'm kind of used to this screen here, so this is the one we're going to come back to. So my computer name is currently client1, that's good. And I'm a member of a work group, that's bad. So let's join a domain. To rename this computer or join a domain, hit this. All right. Interesting. I realized I forgot to reboot my computer, so since changing a domain, so we're going to restart this guy. If you noticed, you can restart it from within the virtual machine, or you can just tell VMware Workstation to. And I chose restart guest. So with that said, our client is rebooting, and when we come back, we will join the domain. I'll log in as admin. It's a local login still. Take two. All right, domain ad.40 rubric pef.com. We'll see if we get it right. If you get a credential box that pops up, that means you've done everything correctly. Your DNS is configured properly in your client. They can ping each other, and everything is working out. So now I am putting in the name and password of our domain administrator that was created when we set up our Active Directory. So, and this account was the local administrator account before we promoted the server to becoming a domain controller. So. I intentionally had this machine's administrator account be called admin, and then one of my domain controller called administrator, just to kind of illustrate what credentials you're using. So I needed the credentials for a domain admin to join this client to my domain. All right, restart again. While the client's rebooting, I thought I would real quick create a domain admin account that I would use, and just a lot of times you can disable this administrator account. Just pick something different here, so or rename it. I think I have you renaming this to enterprise admin, but basically all that I need to do, so I'll make a new user, admin1, sounds good to me. Password 01. Next. Whoop, what the heck was I doing there? Let's start over here. All right, admin1, admin1, there we go. If you noticed here, so when admin1 logs on, he could actually put in, or she can put in admin1 at ad.40 rubric pef.com. That's one way of doing it. We can actually, and we can change this if we want to. I could change this to matc.edu through an Active Directory setting if I wanted my users to perhaps maybe use their email addresses when they log in. That's possible. And our password is going to be password 01. And my password will never change. It's probably pretty bad. All right, so I have an admin, and now what I want to do is under member of, I want to add admin1 to my domain admins. There we go. There we go. So it's interesting. So this administrator account, which again became a domain administrator when we installed Active Directory. Great. You can see this account is actually more powerful. Not only is this account a member of our domain admins, it's also a member of our enterprise admins. And let me pause. That was my dog barking. 1 second. All right. So anyways, so it might not be a bad idea to change this account. Instead of logging on as administrator, you might want to rename it to something else, enterprise admin or whatever. But we're not going to use this account. We're going to use admin1 from this point forward. We're going to log in now to our client. So I can log on locally here. I don't want to do that though. I want to log into my domain. signing into AD. So admin1. Perfect. If I just type in admin, sometimes this will, no. If you want to log on locally, it's yeah. You can just put the period and then a /. You can now that you're logging on, now we're logging on locally to client 1, but I don't want that. I want to log on to my domain. Oops. Admin1. Usernames are not case sensitive. Only passwords are. All right, so now I'm logging on as admin1. I'm an administrator. I'm a domain admin. I'm a domain admin, which means I'm also an administrator on this machine. And that means that we are now ready to install the remote server administration tools. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. I mean, I feel a lot of what I'm talking about isn't super complex, but I know in my face-to-face class, there was a couple things people got hung up on, and that was the intent of the screencast, to avoid that for my online students. So I'm logged on as domain admin. I can't access the internet right now. I mean, I guess I could like log on. I'm on my Mac right now, so I could, I could download the tool and drag and drop it into my virtual machine's desktop. But instead, what I'll do is one of my favorite tricks, and I'll just add a second network adapter to my VM using NAT. Good. So now, when the machine kind of, here we go, once that the device gets installed, I don't want to mess around with this yet. We're not going to reboot or anything. Anyways, now I should have internet access. We'll use Internet Explorer. And then we'll go to Google. And then I will just, and while that's while everything's kind of connecting over here, we'll go back and let's run that command called winver. We're going to need that. We did that 40 minutes ago on our client. I feel like winver. Okay, so this is just Server 2016 version 1607. It's a lot older. I mean, I have an older ISO. There we go. Let's see here. Apologize. Let's see. I lost my train of thought here. I got a phone call. So we're at version 1607. We'll need that to know that in a bit. Ask me later. I'll let this machine be discoverable on our new network that we just added to. Okay, Google. Is Google working? Come on. There we go. Let's download RSAT for Windows 10. Okay. There's things going on still. As this Windows 10 machine is booting up, it still looks like we're installing device drivers, and that this might be associated with VMware tools. I don't know. But I think that's why things are going a little bit slow. I'm also kicking myself for not moving this VM to an SSD on my desktop system. Alright, let's see what we have going on. Get this done with. I can start the weekend here. If I look under, I think installation instructions, it might be that. It might be it. Let's see here. That's not it. System requirements. Just saying, this is just showing us what we're limited to installing on. Let's see here. There, RSAT package. So when we do a download, there's going to be several RSAT packages. You can use package 1803 if your version of server that you're managing is 1803 or 1709. That's not us. We're at version 1607, so I'm going to have to pick this bottom one here, WS 2016 RSAT package. So let's download. Let's pick the 2016. Now I'm running on a 64-bit virtual machine right now. So I'm going to pick this install package. If for some reason your Windows 10 install was 32 bits, you'd go with this bottom one. But I think we're good here. Next. Always allow. And I'll pause it while the download kicks off. Alrighty, so it's downloaded. There it is. Let's run it. We're almost done. Thanks for being so patient. Smart screen can't be reached right now. That's okay. Let's just run this thing anyways. I know it's legitimate. This is something that, so I want this update to occur. So it's going to use our update service. So again, if you're using one of MATC's pre-configured virtual machines, we have the update service turned off along with the bits service. So they won't work unless you modify the registry. So you have to create your own VMs for this. The reason we turned off the update service is we just didn't want our virtual machines to start in the middle of class, start downloading the next Windows feature update or something like that, and have 20 machines all downloading a 3 GB file. Assuming our VMs were connected to the internet. So I'll pause this while the installation finishes up. I rebooted my machine. I thought I'd just show you other user, another way I can log in by just putting in my full user's name here, fully qualified domain name. And with that, we're logging in, and we'll go check out the control panel, and we'll look at the remote server administration tools that we just installed. So now my machine's booted up. I just went to administrative tools, if I can spell, and I see that I have all these tools to manage Active Directory. They weren't there before we ran the RSAT. According to what I read, there was an article. They said if you go into your control panel, you can actually turn Windows features on and off, and you should be able to turn on or off parts of the remote server administration tool package. I didn't see that though. When I go to my Windows features, and when I look here, I don't see anything about being able to disable or enable remote server administration tools. So I'm not sure where it is. But what I am sure of is that the administrative tools were added. And if I want to do things like manage Active Directory from my client now, I can do that. Obviously, you need to if a different user logs on here, he or she that's not an administrator or doesn't have the appropriate permissions assigned to their account, they couldn't do this. But now from my client, I can manage Active Directory. So that was long. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. I hope that helps. Just a few more notes I wanted to just make sure I covered as I went through this. The local logon versus the domain logon, that seems to sometimes throw students for a loop. But you can tell right on your client's screen what here, other user. So if we type in admin1, we're logging on to AD. If I want to log on locally, I mentioned that an easy way of doing it is just the dot, the period, / and the username. I think our local user here was administrator, or was admin. So this user's name and password is stored on locally. Everyone else is stored back on our domain controller. And there's obviously some benefits. You'd want to log into your domain to get group policies applied to your computer and things like that. So you definitely want to use Active Directory. That was the first thing that one student had a question on in my class. There is no local logon on my domain controller. It's just a domain controller. I can't. I guess it's not even letting me pick another user here. There we go. Yeah, if I try the old / we're still logging on to Active Directory. This computer has no local user accounts anymore. They're just all the only database on here is the Active Directory database with my Active Directory user accounts and passwords. So that's another topic that came up in our class. And I think, on your third server or your second server, basically what you would do is to make that machine a domain controller is you go through the same steps that we did on our Windows 10 client to first make it a member server. So you do the server install, you join a domain, it's now called a member server, and then you install domain services on that member server, and you would then elect to make it a domain controller in an existing domain. And that's it. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this. I hope it's helpful. I hope you really learn a lot working on the Capstone project this semester. And you're always welcome to come to my face-to-face classes. That's it. Have a great day. Thanks.